village complex known as Cachalco, means place of the valley quail. The location of our ancestor is in close proximity to multiple large village complexes. Cachalco, I just mentioned, Pachavka, Pa'o, Payachchi Nevetwana, just to name a few, all of which exhibit distinct Payomkawachum visual elements and physical features, like petroglyphs. Now, since the 1990s, Pechanga has been named the MLD by the Commission multiple times in this region, either alone or in conjunction with Saboba. This includes determinations that range from 3.5 miles away to 16.4 miles away from the project site. And this is where our ancestor is located. Now, the ancestor in this case is Payomkawish and must be treated according to our customs, traditions, and funerary practices, our beliefs, not those of the so-called Kizh Nation, being essentially a family group having gone public only 8 years ago. Now, on June 7th, 1999, over 2 decades ago, the Pechanga Tribal Council submitted a letter to this commission about the same issues, bringing me here before you today. For over 23 years, Pechanga has been concerned about the Commission's practice of accepting unsubstantiated documentation in lieu of actual regulations and procedures from other tribes which infringed upon our well-documented territory. We've asked that the Commission address these errors, and it has not. So I'm asking the Commission here today, please address these errors and correct them. On February 15th of this year, so today's July 15th, the Pechanga Tribal Council requested that the Commission pause additions or revisions to both the MLD and the contacts list pending adoption of duly promulgated regulations. In other words, you have a list of MLDs and contactees, hold in place, make no further determinations or actions until you can come up with some actual regulations on how MLDs and contactees are determined. Absent that, we'd prefer to not see any of those further determinations muddy the waters further, which has happened here. So, without a transparent and publicly vetted process of how MLDs are determined, the Commission appears to accept anything from any group without confirming the legitimacy of their claims. And this has been a problem for at least the last 25 years, and in my tribe's case in particular. So, today, as I said, is July 15th. It's been 5 months exactly since Pechanga submitted its request, and we have only received a simple acknowledgement of the request by the Executive Secretary. There has been absolutely no movement on the issue, which we have consistently brought to the Commission's attention for more than 2 decades. So, we are now suffering the consequences we sought to remedy through both our June 1999 and our February 2022 letters. And that harm and suffering is as follows. The denial of most likely descendant to our ancestor in Payomkawish territory. The infringement upon Payomkawish traditional religious and funerary practices regarding our ancestors. Third is setting a precedent for unaffiliated tribes to lay wrongful claims to ancestral territories of other sovereign tribal governments. And 4, providing a forum for even illegitimate tribal groups to the detriment of all California tribal governments, a violation of both the letter and the intent of the MLD statute. We are also very confused as to why the Commission was unaware of the Commission staffers' error in naming the so-called Kizh Nation a group with no cultural affiliation to our ancestor. Pechanga immediately informed staff of their major error, and the Commission staff simply stopped replying to Pechanga. We are deeply concerned that staff did not inform the Commission of this egregious failure so that the Commission might be able to correct the error in a timely manner. Sadly, staff did not, and now Pechanga has twice come before the Commission to try to rectify this mistake. It is simply inappropriate and an affront to this Commission's duties to name a group alleging Gabrielino Tongva ancestry, clearly pushing into Payomkawachum territory. Even if this would-be tribal group might have some use areas on the very northern fringe of our tribal territory, that is a far cry from actually being from the village where our ancestor was discovered. Our people, the Payomkawachum, are the ancestors of this village rather than the Gabrielino Tongva, and certainly not the so-called Kizh Nation. Further, by way of example, while the Payomkawachum have ties to Pavunga and Long Beach, However, Pechanga would never assert that Povonga is a Payamkowish village simply because there are references to it in our language. And this is common along our ancestral territory boundaries. Tribes have traded and have intermarried for eons and have these kinds of ties or relationships, but don't actually have ancestral claims to certain villages, especially along these boundaries, and that is the case here. We didn't live on isolated islands. Moreover, the so-called Kizh Nation is not considered a legitimate tribal group by other federally and non-federally recognized tribes. As I understand the situation, this is a splinter group, Kizh. This splinter group that is not actually affiliated with the Gambarlino-Tongva tribal governments who are long associated with the Los Angeles Basin. In fact, we've been informed that Kizh consists solely of one family. This is the exact scenario implicated by our 1999 letter, and which has continued to be our reality for, unfortunately, over 23 years. Commission staff appears to automatically designate two groups as MLD for discovery without regard to how that may affect a bona fide California tribal government's ability to treat their ancestor with respect and dignity. Why is Commission staff making decisions that lead to situations like this without even asking the affected tribes if the other groups are legitimate? A key component of tribal identity is community recognition by other members of your own community. Does the tribal community you claim actually claim you? And in the case of the Gambarlino-Tongva, they don't claim the Kizh. So in short, the Pechanga community is suffering as a result of the Commission's decades-long failure to address these issues. Since our 1999 letter, Pechanga has been forced to battle other tribal groups' incursions into our ancestral territories by the Commission's flawed process or lack of process for determining cultural affiliation, which really isn't even a process, but more an exercise in arbitrariness. I kind of invented that word, but the practice of arbitrary stuff, because there's no regulations. The direct harm from that practice is in front of you today. Pechanga was denied MLD status for this ancestor in its own ancestral territory, and the Commission's failure to resolve that mistake has forced us further into a situation where the so-called Kizh Nation is poised to remove our ancestor to another location, contrary to Pechanga and Saboba's beliefs and practices. This may end in contentious litigation between the city of Corona and the tribes, because of this Commission's 20-year practice of hiding the ball on how MLD determinations are made. I'm asking the Commission today to help heal the wound it has inflicted by removing the so-called Kizh Nation as an MLD, naming solely Pechanga and Saboba as the rightful Payamkowish descendants of our ancestor. The Gambarlino-Tongvas are not from this area, Corona. Further, we request that the so-called Kizh Nation be removed from both the MLD and the contact lists for the very reasons stated in our 1999 letter. They infringe without documentation and support upon our ancestral territory. And in contrast, Pechanga has submitted information to the Commission on our homelands since that 1999 letter and has added to that record consistently over the past 23 years. In closing, the Commission's practices, which are without the benefit of duly promulgated regulations for either the MLD and contact lists, are hurting legitimate tribal governments. The Commission must stop making decisions based on faulty records or even non-existing records. There must be standards of proof for a tribe's proffered territorial claim. Submitting a map, which is the easiest documentation to manipulate without backup documentation, cannot be the sole standard applied by the Commission when your entire role is to protect the heritage of California's tribal governments. Our ancestors are waiting for us to protect and defend them once again, but our hands are tied right now. I think the last thing I'll add is that, and this is not in my prepared remarks, the exchange earlier on, Madam Chair, you had an exchange with, I think, staff here who seemed to be guessing on what the rules were, and you asked them to actually stop, go back and research this and bring back the actual verbiage of the law, the regulation, the code. That is a real eye-opening and disappointing exchange to see at this level. I would expect more state government. If you're going to opine on whether you can do something or not as a commission, it needs to be absolutely and confidently based in code, in law, and regulation, not the guesswork I saw here today. And that resonated with me in the worst of ways, because that's what I see here, is a lack of process, guessing at what the rules are or what they should be. That's unacceptable to tribes in California who try to deal with the state of California on a government-to-government basis. Governments don't deal with each other based on guesswork. They deal on each other based on laws and agreements, MOUs, rules, not guesswork. Oh, we think the code is this. We think the regulation is that. So I was pleased to see the commission require staff to go back and actually research and come back with something based on the code. And I certainly, on behalf of our tribal membership at Pechanga, hope to see a lot more of that in the coming years. Albeit, these assertions against the commission are many of you are new on the commission, and there have been different dynamics over the years. I see lots of strong capabilities. I think lots of your own experiences as people very active in your tribal communities, leaders in your communities. Hopefully we'll have a sense of understanding of why my tribe and me here today expressing these things, why we feel the way we do. These are serious matters for us, and I know they would be serious matters for you if you were dealing with one of your ancestors in a similar way. Hopefully you won't be, and this won't be happening to you. Okay, thank you very much for your time and for your ears. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioners?
Madam Chair, my concern, and I'm going to stumble here because I know that there's confidential information that I don't want to breach. But just to be candid and direct, my concern, and thank you, Chairman Macarro, certainly appreciate you traveling here today. My concern is that this issue stems back to April. And I think that based on what we understand, there were missteps. I think we made an effort to try to remedy that. It's sounding to me that we were not successful in doing so, since the tribe is back today seeking a redress of the issue and furthering it, I think, with a new request. It sounded to me like a couple of new requests being added than what was previously requested. I could be wrong on that, but that's my recollection. I would like to understand, I guess, from the ES perspective, how can we move this forward? Is that moving it to being an agenda item to better understand, I think, the deeper issues and to address their request for, I forget, a pause on this, and I think to address and maybe clarify the record with respect to the tribes that seem to be in Listeño territory but may not be culturally affiliated to the Listeño territory. Those were the key components. So I'd like, I guess, to understand the process to move this forward so that it can come to the commission as a whole and not stay specifically at the staff level as it seems. And I think I've raised this question before, ES, that the commission body seems to be the party that receives the complaints, but is not necessarily the body that actually comes up with the solutions or works through the problems. And I respect the work of staff, but I also want to be able to understand it and be a part of the solution if we can, or impart a strategy for them to find a solution. And at this point, it doesn't seem that as a body we've been able to do that.
Other commissioner comments before Secretary Hitchcock will respond. Commissioner Pagling.
Yeah, Chairman Macarro, thank you again for your comments. Appreciate them so much. You know, we got to accept responsibility about that, absolutely. And with the new Board of Commissioners, I think we'll be able to address that. I think Secretary Hitchcock mentioned in his executive report dealing with the contact list and the MLDs. And this has been one of the things ever since I got on the commissions. How do we address that MLD issue? How do we address that contact list? And with the changes of executive secretaries, the pandemic, I didn't even know Kizh was listed, honestly. It's just kind of like, who? When it came about me, and so it's kind of, there are some mysteries. I think there have been some discussions with other attorneys regarding the gaps, the what do you call it, the backdoor regulations that have been accepted over the years and the practices, and trying to eliminate that is the task at hand. And it's not to be ignored. I wanted you to let you know that. I'm sorry you've had to do this for 20 years, but in some ways, San Ynez deals with the same type of issues with dealing with other agencies, so we're familiar with it. I just want to let you know that, and we're on the same boat. We're trying to accomplish the same thing, and we hopefully can address this. I just think it's more than just Pechanga. I think addressing the MLD list and the contact list is a priority for us, and it's something a priority for me that I want to address. I just want to thank you for your comments.
Other commissioner
Yeah.
comments? Commissioner Atterbury.
Chairman Macarro, good to see you. Thank you for being here. Just kind of reiterate a little bit what Reggie was saying. I'm a little bit in the dark. I didn't, I think this is something that we'll definitely listen to you and take in consideration. I know that since I've been on here, the commission has been doing their due diligence in developing policies, procedures, rules, and regulations for the most likely descendant. They were always doing it on Thursday before the meeting. The Code Council meets every Thursday. I wasn't involved at. I am involved as a subcommittee member. The contact list, rules, and regulations, we are making progress. And I think we're reaching out to tribes through the consultation. It's a work in progress, but just hearing you say this, I think we'll put it under the microscope a little bit and take a look at it and respect your thoughts.
Other commissioner comments?
Commissioner Macarro, thank you for coming, bringing this to our attention. As a new commissioner, you raised a lot of good points, thoughts for prayer for me. You spoke of understanding your tribal ancestral territory, and each tribe has to understand that. That's something that within my own tribe that we look to, and we try to respect our sister tribes, our neighboring tribes, their boundaries. And this is, looking at it, I think this is a hard discussion to have. I welcome this discussion. But I think as tribal people, we need to. In ceremonies, we're taught to respect each other's ways. Why can't it work in tribal politics? Why can't it work when leaders sit down of neighboring tribes and remember these things? These are things that I take to heart, that I try to think before I speak and give these words life. You raised, I'm still formulating here in my mind what I want to say, which is why I'm tongue-tied. I don't know if I have the answer how to fix it right now, the hurt in your tribe is going through, the hurt that your sister tribe is going through, and probably some hurt that the tribe that may or may not be correctly identified that they might feel. Really trying to wrap my head around that and try to find the honest path in which we should be on. But there are things that we need to look at that you raised with the contact list, MLD, how things are designated. This is work here that I know that all my fellow commissioners welcome. And I know it's hard to hear And I think you've heard it already from my fellow commissioners that we're in the process of still doing this. I'm in the process of getting caught up to speed and going where things are at. As a tribal leader within my own community, it's hard to hear that because, as you mentioned, you've been dealing with it for so long. I don't know how to ask for forgiveness other than to ask for forgiveness. And so I will do that because we do need time. We need time to sort through these things. I hope that you and your citizens can grant us that as we go through it. I hope to have further dialogue, not only with you, but with other tribes that are in this same boat. This is, as I said, a larger scale to deal with. And truly I'm sorry that this is a matter in which your people are going through, and hope that I can find resolution for you in it.
Other commissioners? I just want to speak first. I'm from Pechanga, so everybody knows that. I feel this was an incorrect MLD call, and I feel it needs to be corrected. I'm in agreement with Commissioner McQuillan of desiring to set this over for an agenda item for a discussion and decision by the commission. I don't, in terms of process, it feels unfair that the staff that made the incorrect decision to begin with are going to be the ones to review it. I think that needs to go to a body, this commission, that's ultimately responsible for following these statutes. This is a really difficult position for me to be in. As chair of this commission, I am both disappointed and heartbroken, and also understand my role as commission chair, and being supportive of staff and trying to get them up to speed. But cultural affiliation designations, such as MLD designations, whether you're on the contact list or not, are serious decisions because they have implications that are potentially infringing upon tribal sovereignty if they're done incorrectly. I believe our staff needs training in that. In the old days, there were staff that were assigned to different regions of the state of California. They spent time in those regions getting to know those tribes. They visited the tribes. They talked to tribal leaders. They became well known in those communities and well-versed. And I know that because I was in-house counsel for my tribe, and Rob Wood at that time was assigned to Southern California, and he knew Southern California. He knew all the players, all the tribes, all the cultural folks, all the tribal leadership, even knew the preferred practices and customs of the tribes in his region that he was responsible for, and successfully mediated a couple of cases for us at Pechanga. So I find this really disappointing that this has devolved into this type of situation where it feels like folks are making decisions without even a discussion with a tribal government before you make a determination. If you feel like you've got multiple tribes or multiple tribal affiliations, why aren't you having a discussion with the very folks that you're gonna make a decision that impacts them? And these decisions are not to be made in a vacuum. And they're not to be made by pulling some books off a shelf. So we've been doing this. The MLD statute has been in effect since the 70s. We've been doing this, and there have been more successful chapters, let's just say that. There's been more successful chapters of the commission carrying out its duties of the MLD statute without regulations. So, yeah, there's no regulations, but let's not blame that either, because that was done before with folks that were successfully versed in tribal communities, what it means to be cultural affiliated, what it means to make an MLD determination call, what it means, or who the tribal communities are. And I want us to get back to that. And I would like this decision to be corrected. Thank you. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Good afternoon, Chairman Macarro. Hoka, Miu. It was good to see you come in. I just want to say real quick, you look like you've been working on your tan. Didn't recognize you, but these things, we're all federally recognized tribes, and we couldn't agree. We couldn't even agree on where to have lunch at. So these things, they cannot happen just, spur of the moment. And I really believe it takes all of us to sit down. I'm glad you brought up what you did, talked about, because my feathers would be ruffled too if somebody's encroaching in my territory, my people's territory, my relatives, my ancestors. And this is where that dialogue needs to take place. For you to come, first you sent your attorney last time, took her away from Panama and brought her down here. Still remember that, she was in a hammock. And now you came. So, it shows, your heart and, the importance. And for me, I just want to say, for myself, I will take a look at all the information there and listen to you. I'll listen to the people. So I just wanted to share that. And again, thank you for dropping by. Good to see you.
Chairman? Commissioners? Okay, yes. Yeah.
Two things. One is that I want to underscore, we have not heard anything from the commission since April. So it's just been silent. Not even go to hell, So if that was the case, we should at least know that. The other thing is, Chairman Borges, I appreciate your remarks, everybody's remarks, but I realized in hearing your remarks, kind of sounded like I was making a zero-sum case. It's either us or them, but not both of us together. And that's not the case. Our culture, as many of you, we've been involved in cultural resources for, since the early 1990s for Pechanga, with lots of failures and some successes. And not in this case in front of you and that I spoke of today, but, on a month-to-month, year-to-year basis, in San Diego County, basically, I'll say in Camp Pendleton Marine Corps Base, Camp Pendleton, right? Where that is, just south of Orange County. Just to the north of there is the Juaneño Chachmem, and just to the south in Oceanside is the San Luis Rey Band. Both are non-federally recognized tribes, and for over 2 decades, we've worked with both of those non-federally recognized tribes together, and not just Pechanga, but Paula, Palma, Rincon, La Jolla, to help facilitate repatriation. When those tribes have needed repatriation, there's a process where you need a federally recognized sponsor. So we've done that rather routinely over the years, over the decades. And it works, and it involves sitting down and discussing things. Commissioner Rodriguez referenced a situation between KCRC and the Luceño Payomcoachum bands. It was a tough thing to work out, and it took a couple of years. Commissioner Nelson, you were there, or more. COVID got in the way, certainly. It slowed things down. But we were able to work at a solution, I think, that worked for everybody. And I think everybody walked away feeling that that their cultural and religious needs were being taken care of. by the process. So we have that experience. Now, with regard to the area in question from today, we have had MLD, to your point, Chair Miranda, we've had situations and circumstances where it's been challenging, and there's been other MLDs in the area before. I referenced the mileage, determinations from 3.5 to 16 miles away, and yet we were able to work those things out. What I want to say on that is that there's been, in spite of no actual regulations, to your point, there's been relative equilibrium of who the players are in the area. Who are they? The usual actors, and I've referenced on our side Pechanga and Saboba. What was different this time was unilateral action by a staffer to introduce somebody who's never been a player, or an entity that's never been a player in the equation there in Corona, and that has really been a destabilizing element here, and it's been to the detriment of my tribe's interests. So that's a key thing I wanted to underscore. So we actually, I think, as you referenced, Commissioner Rodriguez, have a very long track record, as many of you do, working together and working these things out. And in spite, again, of not having actual regulations to follow that are transparent and whatnot, the Commission has kind of got it right over the years. Not always, and not without our own disputes, but this is next level. And this is in need of serious addressing. And I have to think, if it's happening to us, there's probably other situations similar to this elsewhere in the state involving other tribes. And I think if you go through the record, I almost used a different word. If you go through the record, I think you will likely find this. So I'm hoping that there's a solution for us and something more global for everyone. So thank you for the additional time.
Thank you. Any commissioners first? No? Okay. Okay. AG Zaratka.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify that while the Commission is empowered to hear public comment on any matter under its jurisdiction, even if it's not on the agenda, you cannot take any deliberations or actions on any items that have not been properly noticed. You are, of course, empowered to do so with this or any other matter under jurisdiction for the next meeting. So just wanted to clarify that before the Executive Secretary responds. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that was the ask by Commissioner McQuillan was to set this over to a point in time when it could be duly noticed and we could take action. Secretary Hitchcock, I just promoted
Thank you, Chairman Miranda. Chairman Macarro, I would like to give my sincerest apology to you and your people of Pechanga. I sent a letter on May 6th to express that about the mistake that the staff had made by not adding you as a co-MLD. You had a small piece of trust land. You had other areas of MLD that were very close to that site. And if the staff could back it up, they would have said Pechanga would be co-MLD, probably not Saboba, because you were closer to that area. The aspect of Kizh Nation is an issue that you obviously deal with, and it's the overlapping of territories. You talk about splinter tribes and those issues. The Heritage Commission is not the expert on who is a tribe and who is not a tribe. That is you as a chairperson, as a sovereign nation of your tribe and your territory. The commission gets information from different tribes that say, we're an affiliation, here are our village sites, here are our Aboriginal territories, and sometimes they overlap and sometimes they butt up to each other. And it's not the commission's place to say, no, that's your village site, no, that's your village site. So that's why there was a co-MLD made there. As you talk about not having regulations with MLD and contact list, I can't wait for the contact list to come before everybody to see what it looks like. So there is a way to vet who is a tribe and where their area is, and when that happens, that allows this conversation to have some real teeth and take that next step. And we're not quite there yet. I wanted to have a contact list ready to put out as a draft so people could see, these are what we want to see, so you can, you will be on a true contact list. I can't, I read the emails about 2017, you spoke with the previous executive secretary. In 2019, you spoke with the next executive secretary, because this happened time and time again. And I figured out the reason why internally, and it's us needing to better our processes, which there you go. You can't really say that, but I'm saying it anyway. You're here to keep me out of a lawsuit. So,
Mr. Executive Secretary, as long as you prompted me, I would suggest that, without cutting off discussion, inappropriately, that this is the type of discussion that should be taking place on a properly noticed action item. That's our advice as your attorneys. You're free to take it.
Commissioner McQuillan or Commissioner Dutchke?
I appreciate that, and thank you, and I understand where you're coming from, but I do think that we owe the chairman at least some explanation as he's come here to speak with us today.
Commissioner McQuillan?
I agree with Commissioner Dutchke. I think I would also add that if we do carry this to an agenda item, I would like to do that so that it is actually on the next agenda. Formally, that we also include some fact-finding efforts to be shared with us if that is appropriate and agreeable to the chairman to share that level of detail. I mean, we are actually getting into a lot of detail here, and I apologize if that's offensive, but I think it's a necessary thing to do. But I would like to see that it move forward. And I don't know if that needs to be if we can do a motion on that, or we can just do that.
I think it can be a staff directive.
Okay.
I also just want to put a punctuation, exclamation point, that this is an ongoing issue that's happening right now. So the harm is happening now. So this cannot wait till a next quarterly meeting, but needs to be resolved as soon as possible.
I would like to add, you said that the commission hadn't reached out to you since April. And Chairman, I did send an email to Ms. Michelle Faley on June 27th, less than, just 3 weeks ago, as a matter of fact, responding to, more requests on the co-MLD list. So I want you to know that I also asked for, if you wanted to speak, to have tribal consultation, I should have reached out to you, as a matter of fact, personally. I think that would have been the respectful thing to do. I apologize for not doing that. If you'd like to have more conversations offline, I'd love to speak with you, and please let us know. Obviously, this is a bigger issue, and it affects the tribe. So.
Commissioner Bojorquez, did you want to say something?
Hearing everything and hearing your responses to this is something happening now and there's hurt happening at this moment. And being able to wait for a quarterly meeting, it is within our purview, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, then to set date to take action at a special meeting so that we can direct staff to gather that information, bring it to us at this special meeting, so then we can take action on it in a more timely manner.
I would also, I guess, add to that, if we can do that as a special meeting, can we do that virtually? I believe we can do so virtually if it's noticed. Is that accurate?
I'm going to take a stab before he steps up. We should be able to do that as long as we notice it 10 days in advance and have a site to do it. But I need to make sure we have the capabilities for a hybrid, if you will.
It's a bit of a moving target with the virtual meetings and the state regulations around that, so I'll have to get back as to whether that's feasible, but we can do that.
I would be in favor of a special meeting. I can make that accommodation. I think that is a part of my concern, is that this has been happening for quite some time, since April, and not wanting to carry it, if that's agreeable. I also want to comment that part of my concern, as I originally stated, is I think that my read of the communications from the time that we received the request in April was to take a certain action. And I don't believe there was a level of consultation with Pachanga before a letter of communication went out. And I think that that is a part of some of the stuff that we need to get better alignment on, is ensuring that we understand fully the requests of tribes, and that if they're making a certain request, that we've contemplated them appropriately and we're answering their questions and their asks, even if it is a denial, that it actually is being addressed in a formal communication back to them, so that we don't have this uncertainty when they come before the body. And I believe that the original letter that we received in April did ask for 2 tribes to be listed and raise the issue of the other tribe not being actually culturally affiliated. And I don't know that that was actually an effort that went underway by the ES, and that, I don't want to get into that, but I think that was the original ask. I could be wrong.
That's affirmative, Commissioner McQuillan. The ask was to add Pachanga to the MLD list and to take Kizh Nation off of it. What I did as the executive secretary, albeit I was only on site for a month, but that is not an excuse whatsoever, reviewing the information, understanding that the commission staff did make a mistake and not put Pachanga as the co-MLD. I added Pachanga as the co-MLD. I did not remove Kizh Nation for the simple fact that it's not the commission's place to remove anybody that says that they have village sites or territory. We're not the expert, the tribes are. And whether they're a tribe or not, that is why the contact list is so important, to get to vet tribes, vet territory, vet cultural affiliation, and have those discussions. And I know that doesn't answer your question right now. It's been going on for a long time, long before I've ever been here. And until we get to this place that's coming soon, I don't know how we move forward with this. We will continue to have these issues until tribes can come together and figure out where their boundaries are. But I think the contact list, when that actually comes to fruition and becomes before the commissioners to say, here's a tribe, here's their Aboriginal territory, here's their affiliation, and people will have the opportunity to hear that and look at that information and be able to opine on it. I think when that day comes, I think that will help to smooth out some of these issues that are in front of us right now and have been in front of us for years. So, thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Hitchcock. With all due respect, and I know that you're, getting situated in this position, that is exactly what this commission and this agency is supposed to do, is make MLD determinations. And that means making cultural affiliation calls with regard to the MLD situation. That's exactly what we're supposed to do. We are to take information from tribes, but as you've said, we are to vet it. And we are to vet it for its veracity. We are to check in with tribal communities in terms of how tribal communities view their own traditional territory and region. We are to spend time in those tribal communities to understand this. And we are to not let groups on a contact list or be determined to have an MLD affiliation that are not rightfully culturally affiliated with those territories. So it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act. We can't also just take information that's submitted to us on its face as, without vetting it and without understanding the veracity of it. Because A tribe could submit a map that said all of the state of California, and what, you're just gonna accept that? No, we're not. I know there were tribes back in the day that were defining territory really broad with maps. And that shouldn't be acceptable. I'm not saying that this is easy, but this is part of the commission's duties to make these MLD determinations, and we have done that in the past where we've said no to somebody and we've said yes to others. And I don't, over the recent past, we've gotten into some kind of patterning where nobody ever wants to make the difficult decisions, and folks don't want to tell people no. And that's part of it. So I understand what you're saying, but this is squarely within what our duties are, is to make MLD designations, and there's no way around getting around the fact that that is making some kind of decision on who is descendant from those ancestors. And that includes a process of vetting and determining the veracity of the information and what is applicable in certain factual situations. Does a use designation or a trade route or some kind of other designation mean that you have cultural affiliation with the territory? It might not mean that. So these are all very nuanced expertise issues. And I think the commission would like the ability to weigh in on that and give direction to the staff on how this is going. And I think that's what the request is, to direct staff to put this over as an agenda item. It seems like there's two tracks here: the broad brush issue of, how staff is going to be trained up and understanding the territories they're responsible for, but then also this particular situation that Chairman Macarro is bringing to the commission today, which is a current, ongoing, time-sensitive issue.
Chairwoman, if you could indulge me, I would like to respond, I think, to this idea that we don't make a decision. I think that we did make a decision, and we took an easy route to just adding a tribe without fully understanding their request and reviewing the facts. I think what bothers me and what deeply hurts about this is that there's this idea that you can hand over somebody's ancestors to somebody that has not actually been fully vetted as culturally affiliated. And if that was the allegation, then it needed to be taken seriously, because you're essentially handing somebody else's ancestors away from them. And that's a very serious offense, not just culturally, but to our sole purpose as a commission. So I'm not getting a sense that there's really a true or deep appreciation for that level of issue. And, I want to say I appreciate, Pechanga being here. And I truly am sorry that we have to air this type of issue publicly, but I think it is an important issue to do this. And so I would like to carry this over to the next agenda. Thank you.
Secretary Hitchcock, anything, or closing? I think we're going to wrap this up, and that's been the request. It sounds like it's a request of the commission to staff. Okay. Any other public comment? Okay. Hearing none, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second that.
Okay, all in favor? We're adjourning at 3:56, right on time. Thank you, everybody.